I feel like the Baltimore Ravens as a whole, like, don't get enough media coverage that they deserve. And for the sole purpose of, them not being able to get over the hump of beating either, Josh Allen on the Buffalo Bills or even Patrick Mahomes on the Kansas City Chiefs. And that brings up a very good point when it comes to next season. And a big question, really, to answer is how good will the Ravens be next season? And are they ready, really ready this time to get that Super Bowl that they've been so desiring since the last time they won it with Joe Flacco? What is up, guys? Welcome back to So Back Sports, and I'm so back with another video. And before we get into today's video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot and really helps me create content like this for you guys, especially with the season coming up soon. So feel free to hit that subscribe button. Anyways, let's get back to the Ravens. And with the Ravens and how busy they've been in this offseason, it won't surprise me one bit that they go out and win the Super Bowl next season. And it's kind of the culmination of so many different things. With in the past having the contract disputes with Lamar Jackson, eventually coming to a deal with that, and even potentially getting an extension for Lamar Jackson. You have a bunch of contracts going out for your offensive line. Getting various players from free agency like Jair Alexander. We're probably going to talk about him later in this video, and paying, the more important players on your defense. And good, that goes without saying that they've built a relatively decent roster, getting some good veteran depth in DeAndre Hopkins. And it's kind of baffling to me how, Lamar Jackson has been seen as a playoff, not really clutch in the playoffs specifically. And that's, while that may be true for the most part, because, there are moments where he makes crucial decisions that make you really scratch your head and wonder, like, is this really the person that won MVP? But also makes incredible plays and moves to put them into position to win, especially like last year. He made that costly interception down the field and eventually led the Ravens to come back to potentially either tie the game against the Buffalo Bills and even win it. Um, but it just comes down to, Mark Andrews not catching that multiple balls and fumbling as well. And that's a whole different can of worms as in itself. And those kind of crucial moments are what kind of define Lamar Jackson. And eventually, of all the rid of all the accomplishments that he's gotten, the multiple MVPs, the rushing statistics, the 4,000 yards and whatnot, had a wonderful season, had an MVP caliber season last season. And I genuinely think that, you know, when it comes to the statistics of it and, the Ravens' success last year, I think he should have been the MVP if it weren't for Saquon Barkley and whatnot. And Josh Allen eventually won that MVP award, whether it's fair or not. I just think that from that perspective, you kind of go into this upcoming season and kind of go all in per se. And the Ravens have done that. Let's take a real quick look at, their overall depth chart as well, because they've been kind of, going really ham this offseason. Getting that Derrick Henry extension done, very well deserved after a really great season from Derrick Henry. He almost put up an MVP caliber season if it weren't for Saquon Barkley. And having a dual threat of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the backfield always brings the pressure into any defense as well. And adding Cooper Rush to be your backup quarterback. They had Tyler Huntley at one point, but I think Cooper Rush, given the experience that he's had, especially with his time in Dallas, he's going to be really solid for them going into this season. If something were to happen, knock on wood, it doesn't for Lamar Jackson. And I think they shored up that front. Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, they got that contract extension done for Rashad. Very well deserved contract, especially even though he didn't have necessarily like an insane 1,000-yard season as a wide receiver. He still, put up some great numbers, had 9 touchdowns last season, was phenomenal in certain points and crucial points in the season. And especially, you got to get as much weapons for Lamar Jackson as well. Adding DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins was on the Kansas City Chiefs. When obviously lost that Super Bowl against the Eagles. Was kind of brought in to the Chiefs to fill that hole and that void for Hollywood Brown that they were missing, and now is going to be on the Baltimore Ravens roster for Lamar Jackson, especially with the caliber that DeAndre Hopkins brings. He brings that fourth down, third down, crucial catch ability, laid hands, still has that first step very well. And while he still may be on the older side, he still will bring meaningful snaps for Lamar Jackson in this offense. And Mark Andrews, say what you want about him, especially with how costly he was in playoff situations like last year. He's still a great tight end in my eyes. I think this season is really what's going to determine, either the passing the torch for Isaiah Likely, especially with how good Isaiah Likely has been as a second option tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. He's up and coming, and he's trying to gun for that first tight end spot. And Mark Andrews has to do everything in his power to keep that, especially with him getting up there in age a little bit. And I think Isaiah Likely will get some more meaningful snaps going into this season, and it's just going to be a little bit of a slight transition in that sense. The offensive line, holding down Linderbaum, getting Falele for Rosengarten, and Ronnie Stanley, getting that solid core for that offensive line, and bringing them able to bring them back is very crucial, especially adding more depth as well on the offensive line side. I think the Ravens have shored that offensive line enough so that they can scheme around Lamar Jackson and that run game. Because at the end of the day, having good blocking is important for a run game in any point of view, and that's going to be one crucial factor going into the season. How well can this offensive line stand up, especially with how tough the season is going to be, and the road to get to a Super Bowl will be long and arduous. And let's go to the defense. Madubuike, and Travis Jones, Broderick Washington, Kyle Van Noy, Roquan Smith. That whole interior line for the D line is going to be pretty solid instead. The right inside linebacker Trent Simpson, Owe, get adding that that's linebacker core. With Roquan Smith. I miss Roquan Smith as a Chicago Bears fan, but then again, continuously adding on to that. And what's funny is that they continue to add players from the 2018 draft. Obviously they had Lamar Jackson from the 2018 draft class. They brought in Roquan Smith from the Chicago Bears, who was also in the 2018 draft class. And now with Jair Alexander, it's another addition from the 2018 draft class as well. And let's talk about the Ravens secondary. And I think that's one thing that's going to be very important. The one thing in the past that's kind of been the backbone, or the Achilles heel of the Ravens, is their how strong their secondary was. While Kyle Hamilton and Nate Wiggins had really good seasons last year, I think that they just needed to bolster up that secondary, and they've very much done that because they added Malachi Starks in the draft. He's going to be very solid, especially coming out of Georgia. Adding Jair Alexander, and how can I forget Marlon Humphreys? But before we get into Marlon Humphrey, Jair Alexander, getting that contract done to bring him in. Obviously Jair Alexander's played with Lamar Jackson in college, and bringing him together, it's pretty cool. It's pretty sick, as a quarterback, having someone that you're familiar with on your team you've played with in college. Obviously great, especially from a chemistry standpoint. Um, but the big crucial issue with Jair Alexander was his health. And if they can allow Jair Alexander to uh, get at least 6 games out of him, or like minimum 6 games out of him, like during the season, and he's healthy come playoff time, he's going to be very crucial and very important. And probably one of the reasons that secondary is going to be a problem for anyone that faces them, even if the Kansas City Chiefs, because you add Malachi Starks, you have Marlon Humphreys, you have Nate Wiggins, who is going into his second season, Kyle Hamilton, coming off of a Pro Bowl season, you're going to be really solid as a in terms of a secondary standpoint. And then you have Chidobe Awuzie as well, who is a good depth piece for that secondary. And how can I forget about the linebacker or the edge rusher, Mike Green? You know, say what you want in the allegations and whatnot, and which very much so if it comes to be true, and we'll have to see how it all plays out. But say nothing in a vacuum, this is a great pick for the Baltimore Ravens. They need to get more pressure on the quarterback, and Mike Green brings that pressure for them, because that's what they need especially when it comes to their defense. You need to get to a quarterback and give them a lot of trouble for them, because then it allows your secondary to be able to get those interceptions, to capitalize on those mistakes against any quarterback that they play. So adding to that secondary is going to be crucial, and getting some pressure to that quarterback, that really depends on what the scheme this year is going to be from their defensive coordinator. So love to see that from the Ravens standpoint. I think they've done everything in their power right now to kind of bolster up that defense. Last but not least, we have the whole kicker situation. They drafted Tyler Loop. From based on what I'm hearing, it's not really going necessarily great in the Ravens camp for him, but I think with time and more reps, I think he will be very useful for them. And especially when it comes to being a kicker, because kickers, not necessarily all of them come out, with a really solid leg. And especially you're coming off of Justin Tucker, who has been your cornerstone kicker, and then, obviously coming off of a really bad season last season. It's going to be a little bit of a learning curve in a sense for Tyler Loop, and it could be the one thing that could affect them going into the season is how good really is their kicking. Because especially in crucial scenarios, when you have long distance and you need to get into field goal range, and it is a long distance field goal range, you need to have kickers, a good kicker at least, that's very consistent. So we'll see what happens with that. And I kind of want to bring another statistic as well. And let's bring this up. Yeah, so oh shoot. Okay. That is not all right. That is it. Okay. So apologies for that. Let's talk about this, because the Ravens offense last year had 7,224 total yards in 2024. That goes for third. I repeat, third all time. Will they be over and under that number in 2025? And I think, if they want to win a Super Bowl, they're going to have to, add to that number. They have to beat that number. Because that's just going to be very important for them, having a high octane offense and being able to, throw anything against the defense that, like, it's like, especially with defenses that they're going to have to come across in the AFC, they have to be ready. They have to. Um, Todd Monken, very good offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. So he is going to have to bring his A game next year. And especially in crucial situations, utilizing Derrick Henry. I cannot stress this enough, because there is no reason, literally no reason, why Derrick Henry in crucial scenarios when the passing game is not working, to only give him less than 20 targets or 20 snaps or 20 carries specifically. It shouldn't be a thing, because Derrick Henry is that disruptive as a running back to cause havoc and go for long gains as a running back of his stature, even at this age in his career. And with a good offensive line, you're going to be able to get those slipstreams and those gaps for him to run. So that's just me. I think that from a standpoint of answering the question of this video, can the Ravens make the Super Bowl? Obviously they can. I think they really can. It's just all about execution now. I think they've done everything in their power right now to get a really solid team around Lamar Jackson. And if Lamar Jackson can build off of what he did last season and get over the hump of beating Josh Allen in the playoffs or beating Mahomes in the playoffs. And if the offensive coordinator cannot, can utilize the run game more, the sky's the limit for this team. And especially with a team that has so much potential like this, their Super Bowl window is still open and it can shut at any moment. So they have to utilize this time, especially this year. I think this is a very crucial year for them, and they have to just do everything in their power. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below about the Baltimore Ravens. Do you think that they will have a good shot to make the Super Bowl or even potentially win a Super Bowl? So let me know down in the comments below. Love to read what you guys have to say. And always remember, let me know what you want me to cover down in the comments below. I'm always open to suggestions. And always remember to like and subscribe to the channel. And as always, guys, we'll see you guys in the next one.